was the inability of Vice President Harris to answer that really important question at the beginning. Are Americans better off than they were 4 years ago? It was a very, very evasive, clearly scripted answer. But the answer to that, I think, if you polled the American people, is I would say 95% would say no, they're much worse off than they were 4 years ago. President Trump had one of the lowest inflation rates in recent American history. Today we're experiencing the highest. We have a first generation of American kids who can't get into homes. We have the unaffordability at the gas station, at the grocery store. People who are downgrading ingredients to make it through the checkout counter. Elderly people who are cutting up their prescriptions to pay for food or fuel. This is happening all over our country. It's the first time in American history that you have a generation of kids who's going to be worse off than their parents. And Vice President Harris has had 4 years to deal with these issues, and they've just gotten worse. And unfortunately, we had moderators who were clearly biased, who were constantly fact-checking Donald Trump. But none of these kind of whoppers that the vice president was saying, and none of her failure to really explain that, answer that first question, that very, very critical first question. They simply sat there on the sidelines and allowed that to pass.
Yeah, welcome to Simply Bitcoin Live, your number one source for the peaceful Bitcoin revolution and cut-breaking news, culture, matic warfare. We will be your guide through the separation of money and state. The first presidential debate, I mean, technically it's the second, but the actual presidential debate between the candidates that are actually running for president happened last night at 9 p.m. on ABC. And I'll approach it from this angle because we are a Bitcoin show, and I don't want to get into all the other political discussions because that's not why you guys tune into us for, and that's not what we're about. But what I will say is, as a content creator, me and Opti have been doing this for a couple years now, and we don't have any professional training whatsoever. We are self-taught. And what I will say is the bias that I saw from professional journalists yesterday was insane. And I'm not coming at it from the angle of like, you know, they mistreated Trump or this and this and that, but I'm coming at it from the angle of most people, what they're feeling right now is the devastating effects of inflation, of which both political parties are responsible for, and the continued like illusion of politicians going and promising the American people that they're going to solve their issues. That is insane. We're going to talk about one of the bills that was passed, I think a couple years ago. It's called the Inflation Reduction Act. That bill spent, I think, over $200 billion. I have the exact number. You don't reduce inflation by spending $200 billion. So we have a predicament and an issue here where it's an educational problem. It's an educational issue. We have to be able to educate the masses on the fact that it's not left versus right. It's green versus orange. Are you for pro-fiat, pro-endless wars, pro-reckless government spending, pro-censorship, pro-nihilism, pro-poverty? Or are you pro-Bitcoin, pro-opportunity, pro-hope, pro-prosperity, pro-censorship resistant, pro-freedom? Like, that's really what's happening here. And what I saw yesterday was incredibly biased reporters and Trump getting upset, and then Kamala, who's been in power for the last 3.5 years, you know, tell this story of joy and happiness and all this. And those are the two choices we have in front of us. Like, that would be very depressing if I didn't have Bitcoin. And that's really what the message I want to focus on today, which is, if what you saw last night regardless of your own personal political beliefs and stuff, depress you and you are just like, holy cow, like these are the two choices in front of us, there's a third choice, and that choice is Bitcoin. You can opt out of that system entirely, and you can start living the American dream today. Because if you've been using Bitcoin as your unit of account for the last, 5 years, 3 years, even housing and groceries have gotten cheaper if you've been living on a sound money standard. And you just kept hearing in the debate yesterday, like, the price of housing is too high. Kamala was like, yeah, we're going to give a tax credit. Trump had his own way of, approaching things. And the entire time I'm thinking, I'm like, the solution is just Bitcoin. But for politicians, like, if they're not the solution, that's a problem. That's an issue, right? So, of course, I'm not going to mention that. And then one last thing I'll say before I bring up our the panelists for today, Opti and our guest, is we have this election, even though Bitcoin doesn't need a politician to succeed, I will say is that we have a pro-Bitcoin, anti-CBDC candidate, which has been endorsed by RFK, which is Trump. And on the other side, you have an anti-Bitcoin and pro-CBDC candidate, which is Kamala. So the two things are separate. You could start living the American dream today. Yeah, someone brought it up in the comment. No mention of $36 trillion government debt, adding $1 trillion every few months. Just to give you guys perspective, most countries don't even have a GDP of $1 trillion. El Salvador's GDP is $32 billion, just to kind of give you guys an idea of the deficit. And how are they able to afford the deficit? They print the difference. And that causes inflation. And that is literally theft from anyone who is holding and earning in dollars. And that wasn't addressed. But there's two separate issues here. Issue number one is both candidates didn't provide a solution. The solution is Bitcoin. Issue number two, if you're a Bitcoin entrepreneur and if you want the Bitcoin industry to thrive in the United States for the next 4 years or so, this year is a Bitcoin election. You have two separate candidates that have two different policies towards the industry, even though one candidate is obfuscating that a little bit by using the media. If you take a look at the data, it's very, very clear. Operation Choke Point 2.0, the proposed 30% Bitcoin mining tax, the fact that nowhere in the Democrats' the Democrats' policy for 2024 is cryptocurrency, digital assets, or Bitcoin included, versus the Republican policy, which includes the protection of self-custody, the right to mine, and just allowing the industry to thrive. So two separate things could be true at the same time. And I'm just seeing this, and it's like a metaphoric Titanic sinking into the ocean. And I'm watching this from the safety of my Bitcoin life raft by having my wealth in self-custody. And I'm just watching this and I'm like, this is a disaster. This is a disaster happening in slow motion. And if you don't have your money in Bitcoin, if you don't have your money in Bitcoin in self-custody, you are literally going along for the ride. Whatever you thought of the debate yesterday, you are going along for that ride. That is what you're opting into by staying in fiat money. But you have a choice as an individual that is completely independent of election to opt out into a non-political money that can't be debased, that is censorship resistant, that is very difficult to confiscate, and that is Bitcoin. So yes, it's an election year without a shadow of a doubt, but the most important vote that you can make this election season is voting with your wallet and taking Bitcoin into self-custody. That being said, also from the regulatory environment, we've made the case for you guys in terms of what is the better political candidate. But holy cow, I saw that yesterday and I said, man, thank God for Bitcoin. If Bitcoin did not exist, it would be a very dark time from my perspective. Like, I think I would be a gold bug maxi in my opinion, because I'm looking at that. I'm like, holy cow, this is insanity. This is late stage fiat. Like that, I think this is what we're getting right now. Like, I think the politicians themselves are suffering from inflation. Anyways, I do want to welcome our guests for today. We have Sina. He's the co-founder and COO of 21st Capital, and of course, my legendary co-host, who I don't know how you could be optimistic after last night, Opti, but like, holy like cow, honey badger, dude, what the F was that? What's your take?
Well, hold on.
Your mic.
Hold on. Well, Nico,
your microphone.
Is it not on? Oh yeah, you're right.
My bad, guys. We're fixed. Nico, first and foremost, optimism is a way of life. You do not search for external input, external stimuli to be optimistic. This is my operating system. This is what I suggest everyone else's operating system should be. Is just pure optimism throughout anything going on. But overall, yeah, it was pretty. it was a pretty horrible debate. First and foremost, a couple of drop balls, in my opinion. No mention of Bitcoin. Not surprised at all. But of course, Bitcoin completely absent in the debate, which you could argue is obviously outside of the Overton window as far as the mass population is concerned. So I totally see that. But they literally started the debate on the economy. And again, a more inside the Overton window issue, as far as I'm concerned, no touching on the idea of printing money. They had all of these obscure reasons for inflation, and it's all about printing money.
Literally, bro. Like it's literally all about printing money. It's so crazy. And then they started talking about like other. Look, most people, like 99% of people, you know what they care about? They care about being able to provide for their family and being able to put food on the table and being able to make a good living. That is like 99% of people's problems. All these other issues, I'm not saying that they're not important, but it's like the emphasis on them is great. And then like not going to World War III would be great also. But like the emphasis on like those, it's like, holy cow. It's like that. That's like, and then this leads me to something that we've been talking about for a long time, for like this last week or so on the show. The general theme is it's not only what is money. The question is like, I'm down the rabbit hole enough where I'm asking like, what is government? Like, what is the role of government? What I saw last night was like not what I'm envisioning. Like, what is government? Government's supposed to like, keep society orderly, protect private property, and, set a set of rules to make sure that people don't cheat each other. Like, that's supposed to be the total, like, what government is all about. And it's been Frankensteined into this, like, government is the all, end all, be all. It's supposed to do everything. Don't worry about it. Now we're going to start giving you tax credits for housing and stuff like that. And we're going to be paying for, like treatment and like this and that. And it's like, wait a second. Like, I didn't agree to any of this. Like, this is insanity, right? Anyways.
Wait, Nico, I also want to touch on a few things. First off, there was a few funny moments during though that I found myself cracking up, especially the like Trump, like, excuse me, I'm speaking. Like, does this sound familiar? That was some good viral moments there, first and foremost, as far as I'm concerned, as someone that makes content. The second part that I think you already touched on is there was seemingly like a fix that was in on that. The moderators, it seemed to be 3-on-1. And then I think one of the most interesting aspects about this, whether Kamala won or lost, is Taylor Swift endorsing Kamala right when it ended. So it did seem like there was a fix going in favor of Kamala. But overall, it's politics. Am I surprised that they're not really hitting on the issues? No, it's just about sound bites and all that stuff. But man, what a crazy world we live in. It really goes to show that maybe we don't need a president to control the economy. Maybe we don't need a president to control the world. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
That's what I'm trying to tell you is like, what is the role of government? Anyways, we haven't let our guests say anything yet. So Sina, how you doing, man? You've been listening to me and Opti just react to the catastrophe of the first presidential debate. Like, if you watch debates from like 20 years ago and you watch them now, it's insane. It's just like night and day. And I really believe that it's I think it has to do with broken money. Anyways, Sina, what's your take on all this, bro?
Hey guys, love to be with you guys. I was just listening and I couldn't agree more with everything you guys said. I mean, very well said, very well put, balanced take. And just following what you just said, I used to listen super carefully to political speeches, not because I cared much about the content, but just because how the quality of the speech. It gave me ideas in how to form my sentences. I used to even listen to Obama's speeches in terms of to learn better English. Not that I agreed with the content one way or another, but now it's probably a harsh word to say, but it's all a clown show for me. It's all theatrics.
Totally, that's what I'm saying. It's nuts. They're talking about eating the cats and bro, I was like, holy, what is this? These are the people controlling the nuclear code. It was mind blowing. 100%. It used to have a lot more prestige. They used to speak better. I completely agree. But yeah, it's just crazy. And also another news, guys, we're going to talk about Max Keiser's global hash war as well. Really looking forward to that. It looks like countries, public companies, energy companies, they're all mining Bitcoin. Max Keiser is making the case that there's going to be a global hash war, not war in the traditional sense, but essentially a battle for which country could accumulate as much Bitcoin as humanly possible. And I think it's obvious in hindsight. But we always knew that this was going to happen. But it's just crazy watching it play out, in my opinion, to the point where the Marathon CEO is literally saying that Bitcoin is a matter of national security. And this comes on the heels of the news coming out of Russia, where Putin made literally a 180 and essentially made Bitcoin mining legal and Bitcoin for facilitating international transactions legal as well. So I think this is Bitcoin's incentives playing out in real time. It's glorious to see. It's awesome. But I can't say I'm not surprised either. This is Bitcoin's incentives for you. Anyways, guys, before we jump into the show, we're also going to talk to Sina about a 21st Capital during the culture segment. So really excited about that as well. But before we jump into the show, I do want to give a very special shout out to Simply Bitcoin's lead sponsor. When Simply Bitcoin got deplatformed, one of the things that one of the messages that I kept getting from people is hey, how can I, donate? How can I help you guys? The best way to help us, guys, is support our partners and our sponsors. And we're very, very picky on who we choose to partner with. For example, our lead sponsor, Bitcoin Well, is the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. It's automatic self-custody, meaning you can't even leave Bitcoin on the platform. As soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state, because after all, self-custody is the revolution. To get started, go to bitcoinwell.com today, buy real Bitcoin, and enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin in Canada and the USA. By the way, every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn Bitcoin Well points, and you could use those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest. We'll do one for you guys right quick right now. We're going to toss a coin into the Wishing Well, and first person to scan the QR code has won 500 sats. By the way, every time you toss a coin into the Wishing Well, there's an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. We had 2 winners last week for 21K Satoshis each. By the way, if you use promo code simplybtc to sign up to bitcoinwell.com today, you get 3 tosses into the Bitcoin wishing well. All right, everybody, let's hit the numbers. Lots to talk about. All right, guys, I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stampseed. Usually when you buy a hardware wallet, it comes with a piece of paper, and you're meant down to write your seed words on that piece of paper. Problem is that paper is prone to water damage, can be burned in a fire, your dog could eat it. That's not the proper way to store your generational wealth, which is why we recommend our sponsor, Stampseed. Literally proof of work. Stamp your seed into a plate of titanium. And the Stampseed kit, a titanium seed phrase storage kit, comes with everything you need. The metal stamping tools, like the letter punch tools, the plate, the hammer, the anvil, it comes with everything. So you could literally stamp your seed words into a plate of titanium, which is going to stand the test of time. It's fireproof, it's waterproof. Your dog's probably not going to want to eat a piece of titanium. So this is the right way to store your seed words. Head over to stampseed.com today. Use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their website. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is at $57,040. Sats per dollar, 1,753. Block height, 860,899. Blocks to halving, 189,101. Halving estimate, March 23rd, 2028. Total Lightning Network capacity, 4,962 BTC. Capacity value, 283 million. Realized monetary inflation, 1.38%. Market capitalization, 1.13 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 6.47%. In the grand scheme of things, we are just getting started. Anyways, another example of what I was talking about earlier on the show is, again, like this is gnarly. Here's Elizabeth Warren, and here's her solution for lowering the cost of housing.
You might think you're never going to be able to afford buying a home, and you're not alone in that. A new poll shows that 86% of renters in the United States want to buy a home, but can't afford one. It doesn't have to be this way. I have a bill that would build 3 million new housing units and lower the cost of housing, all paid for by taxing the ultra wealthy. I'm fighting to get this done.
It's just like we're gonna tax more. I have a bill. This is the solution. Like it's total clown world. Now let's take a look at like what is the actual cause of housing going through the roof. Well, first I want to present you with a clip from Joe Biden referencing the Inflation Reduction Act. It's interesting. Take a look at what he has to say at the end regarding the bill.
My investments, through my investments, the most significant climate change law ever, and by the way, it is a $369 billion bill. It's called we should have named it what it was, but
they should have named it what it is. So like spending $369 billion and then obfuscating that behind a so-called Inflation Reduction Act because they know that people are hurting from inflation. Like, that is evil, man. That is evil. And by the way, both political parties, they print money. So this isn't just focusing on the Democrats specifically, but they're the ones that are in power right now. But both political parties, they just print money. And who pays for that? Well, anyone who's earning and saving in fiat is the ones footing the bill. So, like, this is nuts. This is gnarly. And this is the psyop. Like, this is the thing that we have to do as Bitcoiners. Our mission is to wake people up to the scam that is fiat money. Our mission is to wake people up to the fact that if you start living your life on a Bitcoin standard, you don't have to wait for Elizabeth Warren to tax the ultra wealthy. You don't have to, wait for the Inflation Reduction Act, which isn't even focused on inflation. It's focused on climate stuff. you don't have to focus on any of these things. And I'm going to read you a quote from Milton Friedman. He says, inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon in the sense that it is and can be produced only by a more rapid increase in the quantity of money than in output. Very simple. So, and now let's get to the Inflation Reduction Act, right? Now that you know that, right? How do you reduce inflation? You stop printing money. And then I'll show you guys the housing data as well. So the Inflation Reduction Act, which was signed into law by President Joe Biden in August 2022, is projected to cost approximately $437 billion over a decade. El Salvador's GDP is $32 billion, just to kind of give you guys an idea of the scope, right? The majority of this spending is directed towards addressing climate change, healthcare costs, and energy security. Then why is it called the Inflation Reduction Act? Like, it's a gaslight, and they're taking advantage of the fact that people don't understand and they're not aware of the fact that money can exist without inflation. Politicians have been taking advantage of that for a very, very long time. And then they come to you with false hope and solution. Like, well, I'm going to pass a bill. Like, it doesn't need to be this way. Yeah, it doesn't need to be this way if you stop printing money. Now, let's take a look at the data, right? So if you take a look at the year, right? This is when the pandemic happened, right? This is 2020. That's the M2 money supply chart, right? Now let's take a look at inflation. It's 2020, started printing money, 2021, 2022. Isn't that crazy, right? And then you hear Elizabeth Warren talking about, the housing prices, like they keep going up. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's we have to tax the ultra wealthy to fix this. Okay, so let's take a look at housing prices. Look at that, 2020. How it's almost as if it's correlated with the money supply. Look at that. Maybe I'm just seeing things that are not there. Isn't that interesting? And it's almost as if the inflation rate is correlated to the money supply as well. Isn't that a coincidence, all of these things? And then government solution, right? Here it is let's tax the ultra wealthy. And the other government solution in the Inflation Reduction Act is to print more money, which we don't have. The U.S. government spent $1.7 trillion more than it collected in tax revenue in 2023. How are they able to spend that type of money? They printed the difference. And what happens when you print the difference? This is what happens. So Elizabeth Warren, the solution to making housing prices affordable for the average everyday American is not your freaking bill. It's to stop spending money we don't have. The problem is with this system is that you can't rely on the government to do that, because you have to essentially trust that the government isn't going to debase the currency. This is something that Satoshi identified very early on. Don't trust, verify. You don't have to trust anyone in Bitcoin. It's absolutely scarce. There's 21 million. No one's going to debase it. It's censorship resistant. Because of those things, if you've been saving in Bitcoin for the last 3 to 5 years, that housing that you saw going up in fiat terms has actually decreased by 80 to 90%, even though housing has doubled in fiat terms. It's not politicians that are going to solve these problems. It is individuals choosing to opt out of clown world by opting out of political money by choosing Bitcoin. That's going to solve these problems. And none of this was addressed during the debate last night. This is the solution to these problems, not more bills, not more politicians. Now, I'll end it with this. That being said, what politicians can do for hyper-Bitcoinization to accelerate is get out the way and create a positive regulatory environment for Bitcoin businesses to thrive. And there, it's a very simple decision. You have a pro-Bitcoin candidate and you have an anti-Bitcoin candidate. Worse, you have a pro-Bitcoin candidate, anti-CBDC candidate, and then you have a anti-Bitcoin candidate, pro CBDC candidate. So this is just, it's clown world. But the reason that they keep getting away with it is a failure on our part, because that means that we have not educated enough people on the scam that is fiat money. And as long as these politicians are able to operate in an environment where most people are still asleep and they're seeking to politicians for solution, and they're not taking agency and personal responsibility and choosing to opt out into a better unit of account and a better money, then this is going to keep happening. And the debates that happened last night, they're going to keep happening. And you're going to continue to see more gaslighting with the audacity of naming a bill called the Inflation Reduction Act, because they knew that people were pissed off about inflation, that all it did was literally spend $369 billion. It is insane. So we're going to keep hammering this message home until enough people wake up to the fact that fiat money is a scam. All we need is a 5 to 10% of the minority to wake up to this reality. And I'm telling you guys, we're going to effectuate change more than any politician would have ever been able to. Politicians and government are the problem. They're the ones causing these prices to go where they are. It's not anything else. And don't let them gaslight you to believe otherwise. Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to Sina and then Opti.
Yeah, well said. If you're familiar with this thing called a tragedy of the commons, it's kind of something that economists discovered, and I think someone got a Nobel Prize for working on it. The idea is if you have a shared resource that is owned by everyone and no specific party is responsible for it, it ends up in tragedy because everyone will just try to extract as much as possible from that resource without really owning the consequences. So it's like you extract for yourself, consequences is shared, socialized among others. And that's exactly what's happening in our world right now. Politicians are extracting value out of every paycheck we get. You know, if you add up all the things you pay for, perhaps you get just a little bit more than half of the wage that your employer pays. That 30%, 40% of it goes to a shared pool of easy money for these politicians. And what they do is they now use that money to promise their friends and family different beautiful things. And that demand is endless. There's endless number of parties in a society that just want more and more from these politicians, and they're gonna just trade those tax dollars with votes and guarantee that they'll remain in power for a longer time. And this always creates a lot more pressure to spend than we have money. And as you aptly mentioned, fiat actually allows us to spend more than we have, and again socialize the cost and have everybody else pay for whatever plan that a politician devises as a deal with the stakeholder that they're dealing with. And so this is what's a democratic system is doing. They are extracting value from the society and creating a tragedy of commons with the resource that's a tax dollar. So when they tell me that, some in the debate again, question came up like, what have you done to do this? What have you done to do that? And the answer is like, I spent so many $1 billion on this. I created so many tax credits for this group. I'm like, that's not anything you did. You simply took money from some other people and redistributed it to other people. You didn't create any value in that work. You simply moved someone's money and gave it to someone else. Most of the politicians think the job is to just redistribute resources from one person to the other, but in fact most of the economic problems doesn't need anything. The solution is not the answer is not telling me where you spent money. The answer is just get out of the way and don't do anything. So that's the right answer. But what we hear from both sides is, I spend money here, I will spend money there, I'll create tax credits here. But the solution to our problems is for these people to do nothing, absolutely nothing.
100%. Yeah, like if they just got out of the way, it would be, it like, so that's the thing, and we have so much work to do, guys, as on an educational level. Also appreciate all of you guys zapping us some sats on zap.stream. Opti, real quick, about 2-3 minutes, and then we'll go into the news segment.
Yeah, hold on. I think I need a new cord over here. Anyways, really kind of doubling down on what Sina was saying. The real issue here is not taxing wealthy people, but I think the signal here, or rather the message behind what Elizabeth Warren is saying, is that most people are just really economically illiterate. They just don't understand how things work. It's obviously an emotional plea that Elizabeth Warren is saying right now. It is fashionable right now to think that it's the wealthy people that are ruining the country, that it's the wealthy people that are taking advantage of the average everyday person, where in reality, we're all getting poorer because of fiat money, because government debt, because government words is our money right now. All you have to do is trust in the system, and they're going to continue to flood the system with more fiat money in it, which is going to devalue everything. And so when you hear them say, we just need to tax the rich more so that you can have affordable whatever, in reality, I always just look at it, it's them deflecting from the real problem. Hence why I started this with, I didn't hear one point in that whole debate last night about them printing more money or them stopping to print money. All I heard is what Sina was saying is like, oh, I spent billions of dollars to fix this. And it's like, that is the fundamental issue here, is the amount of money that is being created, which is devaluing all of our holdings and all of our wealth. And if you aren't wealthy enough to own assets, you're getting poorer. You're getting wrecked by the system. The system is designed in a way where if you do not hold assets, if you are only saving in dollars, you are going to get poorer. And this is by design. And even if you really take into account Elizabeth Warren's strategy or bill of taxing the wealthy, it's also a cap on whether you have social mobility, whether you can actually move up in the system. There's never going to be an escape from this. Everything I'm hearing is just different mechanisms to keep everyone else poor and keep their, at this point, cartel or cartel or mafia over the money printing that is going to keep us all in perpetual poorness forever. This is why we Bitcoin, is so you can save in something that they can't control, that they can't debase. And this is the whole point. This is why Bitcoin really pulls a trump card on the fiat system. They can't financially engineer the system anymore with Bitcoin, though they're going to try. The real problem is they don't know how to balance a checkbook. This is the problem. They're spending more money than they have. And it seems to be okay on the federal level, but when we do it on an individual level, you go bankrupt. The U.S. has already been bankrupt, and Elon's been saying like the U.S. is about to go bankrupt. It's like, man, what happened in 1971? What happened in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was created? It's like we've been on this runaway train for a long time, and now we have a fix, which is Bitcoin. And more people need to wake up to it, and more people need to learn to it. More people need to invest their capital and their wealth in Bitcoin, and things will start to change. And it's happening. It's slowly but surely it's happening.
Absolutely, 100%. All right, everybody, before we move on to the news segment, stay tuned because we're going to talk about Max Keiser's theory, the global hash war. It's playing out in real time. This is going to be the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to be Bitcoin growing up, heading to the next phase. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Let's head into the news. Let's do this. Here we go. Special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your piece of Bitcoin. All right, everybody, use the QR code on your screen right now. It'll take you directly to the Passport by Foundation Devices website, where you can use promo code SIMPLY to get a discount on their hardware wallet. All right, everybody, so let's talk about this. Here's Max Keiser being interviewed by Isabela Santos at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville 2024.
Everyone comes to Bitcoin eventually. You get it at the price you deserve. Everything goes to zero against Bitcoin. Okay, Donald Trump's learning curve on Bitcoin just started. And, he's like a lot of people who come to Bitcoin and said, I just found Bitcoin. Here's how you improve it. No, you are second to Bitcoin. You will have to bend the knee to Bitcoin, just like everybody else. Bitcoin is on its own vector.
What does the United States or the president that is in the election have to do, to bend the knee?
He has to make Bitcoin legal tender. He has to start putting Bitcoin on the treasury of the U.S. government, and he has to start in the Bitcoin global hash war. Every country is not going to be adding Bitcoin to their reserve status to compete in the global hash war in the 21st century. That's World War Bitcoin. You have to have Bitcoin. It's a mad scramble to get more Bitcoin because the fiat money world is collapsing. So if you want to win World War Bitcoin, you need to start accumulating and hoarding and buying and stacking Bitcoin aggressively as soon as possible. And that's hopefully the U.S. is already far behind. I wish them luck.
So, okay, a couple things to unpack here, right? First thing is this idea of the global hash war, right? And that you'll see more and more countries try to get exposure to Bitcoin in a variety of different ways. Also, one thing I do want to mention about Max. Max was telling people about Bitcoin since it was basically $1, right? He's been around the block. He's, Bitcoin OG. And remember, back then, a lot of people reacted to Max the same way that potentially some people are reacting to Max when he's talking about, the Bitcoin global hash war. It's like, what are you talking about? A mad scramble to Bitcoin? Like, I'm never going to see that happening. Well, it's already happening, and I'll make the case for you guys right now. First, in El Salvador, they've made their reserves public. Every single day, they acquire 1 Bitcoin. It continues to go up, not to mention their mining capacity. Also, we have the CEOs of large publicly traded Bitcoin miners saying stuff like Bitcoin is a national security concern for this country. Let's take a look at what the Marathon CEO has to say.
Bitcoin is a national security concern for this country. Russia is the world's second largest Bitcoin mining nation. Countries that operate on a Bitcoin standard from a perspective of transacting and holding Bitcoin can transact outside of the sanctions environment. They can transact outside of government controls. If the US does not have a substantial amount of Bitcoin mining onshore, they can be locked out, and US companies can be locked out of transacting their Bitcoin. So strategic ownership of block space is of a national security concern. And that's why with 40% of global Bitcoin mining in the US must maintain dominance, not just in Bitcoin mining, but also in the holding of Bitcoin assets in US companies, whether they're ETFs, whether they're Bitcoin mining companies, whether it's MicroStrategy. But the US must maintain dominance because by the same reason the US holds 40% of the gold reserves in the world, they can exert influence in financial markets. They have to do that as the world transitions to digital currencies.
Okay, it's incredibly well said. Ben, do you have anything you want?
So what does that remind you of with what Keiser was saying, right? Keiser was saying in a prophetic way, like this is Keiser has been saying this for years. You have to understand that. And then you now have I believe his name is Fred Thiel. You have the CEO of Marathon saying, we have to stay on top of this. And then you had Trump at the Bitcoin conference literally saying, which is just common sense, if the United States doesn't take a leadership role within the Bitcoin industry, then China's going to do it. And here's the beautiful thing about all of this, guys, specifically if you're not American or you're whatever, look at it from this way. And this is a theory from the sovereign individual, when countries start competing for your business and your Bitcoin, and you're a Bitcoin holder, you know who wins? You do, the individual. Anyone who is holding Bitcoin is actively working for you. That's something that people have to understand. That's something that you have to wrap your head around. And shout out to Keiser for once again being prophetic in this and just noticing, because it's the game theory playing out. Now, Fred Thiel said something really interesting about Russia. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Russia just legalized Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin for international trade. This happened September 1st was when the bill went into action. So could you imagine a country like Russia, which you can make a very strong case has an authoritarian regime with Putin? Could you imagine why they would see the necessity to make something like Bitcoin legal tender? Not legal tender. They would make Bitcoin mining legal. Why do you think that's happening? Well, they see exactly what Max sees. They see exactly what the CEO of Marathon sees. It's not an option. It's a necessity as the world transitions to digital assets. Now, this isn't just happening in the United States and Russia. This is something that's happening worldwide. This is something that we mentioned a couple days ago. Japan's largest electricity provider explores Bitcoin mining with surplus renewable energy. So now you have the largest energy provider in Japan is actively mining Bitcoin. This is not an isolated incident. We've talked to you guys about the Kingdom of Bhutan. Bhutan partnered with one of the world's largest publicly traded Bitcoin miners, Bitdeer, and guess what? They increased their mining capacity from 100 megawatts to 600 megawatts, meaning they added 500 megawatts of mining capacity and infrastructure right before the halving. What does that tell you about what they anticipate is going to be Bitcoin's future price appreciation? You don't make that type of investment into Bitcoin mining with the halving around the corner if you don't believe that the dollar term, the appreciation of Bitcoin is going to continue into the future. So now you have the United States, you have Russia, you have Japan, you have El Salvador, you have Paraguay, and energy companies as well. Actually, this came out 2 years ago. ExxonMobil was mining Bitcoin in North Dakota as part of its plans to slash emissions. So the writing is on the wall. And I think it's a game of musical chairs. It's a game of very, very big musical chairs. Why? Because unlike gold, and I told you guys this yesterday, I like physical gold. But physical gold isn't absolutely scarce. You don't know how much gold is in the ground. You don't know how much gold is floating in outer space. When the price of gold goes up, the amount of gold production goes up with it. So the average inflation rate of gold is roughly like 2 to 3% on a yearly basis. The inflation rate of Bitcoin right now is at 1.38%. And it's guaranteed to get cut in half in 4 years. And 4 years after that, it's going to get cut in half again. Bitcoin is absolutely scarce. And if there's roughly 50 to 60 million millionaires all around the world, but there's only 21 million Bitcoin. Do the math. And then not to mention, it's not only the millionaires that are competing for this. It's nation states, it's public companies like Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor has proven that his strategy is outperforming everyone, including NVIDIA. Like, what is coming is essentially people realizing that, holy cow, we need to get a hold of this asset. The problem for a lot of these governments and a lot of these millionaires, a lot whatever, is that there's only 21 million Bitcoin. Are you going to sell your Bitcoin to them? I'm not going to. Opti, are you going to sell your Bitcoin to BlackRock or Russia or any of these nation states? Sina, are you going to sell your Bitcoin to BlackRock and Russia and any of these nation states? No. So what's going to happen? The price is going to go up. I'm still not going to sell it because I'm not in this for the money anymore. I'm in this for the frickin' revolution, baby. Anyway, Sina, what are your thoughts on all this? Is Max Keiser saying crazy things? Do you agree with his perspective? What's your take?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is for a lot of us, Bitcoin is a solution to the world, to a lot of the economic problems, and perhaps beyond that. And important to realize that making money or thinking of it as an investment is one part of it. But what really excites me is the fact that I truly believe that Bitcoin adoption of Bitcoin is a step forward. It's going to improve economics. It's going to create more and more wealth for a lot of people and solve the issue. So to me, the revolution part is extremely important and extremely relevant, and that's what excites me. I remember just bursting into I was crying when I heard El Salvador adopting Bitcoin. Not because I thought my bags are going to go up, right? Just because I all the ideas that were in our heads in terms of what's possible, how the world is going to change, and how Bitcoin is going to affect change in the world, it was materializing. And since then, before and after, everything is just happening according to the proverbial plan. I remember a few years back, I was running an educational platform with live sessions answering people's questions about Bitcoin. And something that typically came up was government is going to ban it. And we were explaining to people, hey, talking about game theory, talking about the idea that government is not one thing. It's a lot of people and not a lot of stakeholders, a lot of parts. It's not a monolith. And they will never agree on the same thing. And if one part of the government wants to ban something, another part realizes that there's something to be gained. And same idea happens across government, between governments as well. If one government wants to ban it, another government figures out, hey, we can make some money here. It's going to help us. It's going to help our treasury. So that was very unlikely to happen. But a few years back, this was just an idea. It was our analysis. But just seeing this happen in real time, year after year, it's just amazing. And it's happening before our eyes. And we just have to see it. And a lot of people don't, right? This is how you miss some of the biggest changes in the world, by just not looking. And, this year we've had some of the biggest changes in Bitcoin adoption. Obviously with the ETFs, approval of the ETFs, Wall Street is coming to Bitcoin. We heard of pension funds. Some of the most conservative institutions are now investing. Wisconsin Board of WISB, I think I forgot the full name. They are now investing, and they will definitely do more and more. And more than $17 billion of Wall Street money has come to Bitcoin. Then we have specific companies that are learning from Michael Saylor and taking a page from his playbook. There's Semler Scientific. He will be a mini Michael Saylor in the next few quarters. Semler Scientific is a medical device manufacturer, and his CEO, just listen to what the CEO says. It's exactly Michael Saylor type stuff in terms of conviction and belief in Bitcoin and so on. We also have the same thing happening outside of the US. Like there's Meta Planet in Japan that's exactly doing this. Another Michael Saylor move, and there will be many, many more that we're just not hearing of, right? It's many institutions are silently adopting Bitcoin and taking positions without disclosing it. Some have incentive to disclose it, but a lot of them do not. They think they won't gain much by doing that. It's much better to silently accumulate. And if you just use your imagination, you'll see many things are happening below the surface, and we will see them as time goes on. Same thing happening with nation states. We have El Salvador. We have several other nation states interested in adopting it, putting it on their treasury, and we have several other countries that are interested, and I'm sure they're actively investing in expanding their mining operations. And a very simple one is, say, you talk about Russia, but we also haven't heard much concrete plans from the Middle East and oil-producing countries. Do you think they have an incentive to mine Bitcoin? Well, if you have so much oil, if you have so much gas, so much energy, and there is an international buyer that doesn't require you to agree to anything, it's a perpetual buyer. You can sell your energy to that system anytime, 24/7, and get a handsome money for it. You don't need any permission to participate in anyone's money. You simply use your energy to mine Bitcoin. So it's a perpetual importer of energy. Do you think the oil exporters are interested in mining and getting into the game? Of course. At any level you think about it, there is adoption. And people sometimes get so impatient, they just want the price to moon, this weekend. But everything is happening according to, what we were expecting, the trend. I just put out a tweet as well, showing the trend of Bitcoin addresses. And it's very interesting. You see Bitcoin going from a bull market to a bear market, but the trend of adoption is the same, almost the same. Like in the past 10 years, we've been adding 50 million addresses every year. And as I say this, I guarantee there's someone that's typing, hey, addresses don't mean number of people. One address can represent so many people, and so many people can represent one address. Of course, but still, this is a rough proxy, right? You can also improve it by limiting the size of address to a certain number of dollars. But I've looked at all these things, and the same idea comes out. Bitcoin is growing regardless. It's a network, and it's benefiting from the power of networks in expanding and getting stronger as they grow, right? So actually, if you look at the Bitcoin's growth, it's a power of 3 in time. So as Bitcoin age increases, the size, the number of addresses grow proportional to a cube of age, something like that. So it's and it's been doing that like forever. It's funny because it doesn't matter like what huge things are happening. It doesn't matter if the price is down. Doesn't matter if the price is up. Network is growing, and the world is smart enough to realize we have a great solution to a lot of our problems. And if we just join this network, it's going to be much better for us and much better for people around us. So it's a selfish thing, but also it's a revolution, a step towards improving the world as well. And we simply have to kind of acknowledge what's going on.
100%. And it's monumental. And I would say it's like, I wouldn't say it's selfish. I would say it's like Bitcoin is an aligned incentive structure system. So the miners acting out of their own self-interest, the hodlers, the node operators. And I think it's very difficult if you're coming from the fiat world and it's like, what do you mean everyone could win? And you're like, yeah, basically, like it doesn't mean that everyone has the same purchasing power. Like Michael Saylor has, he could leverage his company and he has billions of dollars, but you're still going to benefit from that price appreciation just as much as Michael Saylor. And Michael Saylor is going to have to buy spot Bitcoin just like everyone else, right? It's not a system of special privileges, and it's a system with aligned incentives. So anyways, I do want to continue this conversation, but let's get to the culture real quick, and then we'll continue talking to Sina. Let's check it out. All right, everybody, before we continue the conversation with Sina and hand it off to Opti, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, The Orange Pill app. Stock friends who stack sats. Join the 12,233 Bitcoiners that are currently on the app. The Orange Pill app is your #1 resource for Bitcoin-only events. If you're traveling, you're going to a new city, perhaps you don't know anyone around you, the Orange Pill app is for you. Why? Because you could pull it up and it will literally show you the Bitcoiners that are around you, and you could send them a DM directly. It's also one of the best ways to connect with me. I don't really answer Twitter DMs these days or emails. So if you want to reach me, you want to ask me a question, download the Orange Pill app today. Scan the QR code or check the link in the video description. Anyways, Sina, you were on a, I love that. I love it. You're on a legendary rant. I want to continue that. I'm going to hand it off to Opti. I'm sure Opti has some questions prepared. And I also do want to give Sina where credit is due. Sina, your resume is quite impressive. PhD, you're a professor. I saw MIT in your bio as well. So this is a very intelligent individual who's in front of us today, and he's also the COO of 21st Capital. So, anyways, I just wanted to say that. Opti, it's all yours.
Yeah. Let's continue this theme of adoption. And I did pull up a couple tweets of yours, and I really like this framing that you put out there, Sina. And it's this idea of the age of Bitcoin is what matters, and not the calendar year. So, can you explain this? And I do have the tweet up here, so some visuals for the people.
Yeah. So, again, I want to go back to the concept of a network, right? Bitcoin is a vehicle for storing value and transferring value, and it also almost becomes a social phenomenon because it's kind of a glue that connects human beings, and through that we create a network, right? And networks have this beautiful property that they are a lot more valuable when a lot more people join, right? We've all heard about the network effects, Metcalfe's law, and the idea that very roughly speaking, it varies, but it's also strikingly similar across network, that the value of a network is a square of the size of it. Again, like I said, many ways to define the size of a network, but if you just look at the number of addresses that we saw in the previous chart, it's funny enough that this number of address explains a lot of the price growth. And when you run the numbers, price growth is a function of the square of the number of addresses. There's a multiplier there too, but it's strikingly similar to what everything else we know from other networks. So it's kind of a beautiful theory that explains Bitcoin gets more and more valuable as the network grows, and there is a lot of volatility, and all I see there is the fundamental growth that's happening, and that growth is attracting a lot of crazy money too. 100x leveraged guys that want to get a Lambo next week, and Bitcoin is very fair. I always say Bitcoin punishes tourists. And if you're there to just make a quick buck, Bitcoin is going to have you, leave you disappointed, and you're going to lose your coins. And the people who are in it for the long run, and they've done the homework, they've spent hours and hours understanding this thing, they will be the more successful ones. So that there's just poetic justice in all those bull and bear markets. But if you take a slightly more quantitative approach to understanding the growth, you see that, again, following what you expect from network behavior, Bitcoin's value is very, very much proportional to its age. And age, again, why does age matter? Because age links to adoption. And so a value of 1 year was a lot more important when Bitcoin was 1 year old. So another year would be doubling the age. But now another year will be just taking us from 15 to 16 years old, right? So it's getting kind of less and less significant. But if you think in terms of age, the value, the price of Bitcoin is kind of behaving in a very regular manner as a function of the age. So if the age, for example, in that chart I was showing, every time the age of Bitcoin has increased by 40%, the price has 6x'd. And it's just striking because I analyze a lot of financial data, and you can't find these regularities in anything else. And I'm not saying this is exactly going to repeat in the future. There's a lot of caveats you have to say before you make a claim like that, but it has done this for the past 15 years, and it makes total sense. As it grows, 40% increase in age is as valuable now as it was previously. So that's why you get the same multiplier of growth as time goes by.
So I noticed there was a slight price prediction there. I do want to bring that up. So Bitcoin grows 6x with every 40% growth in its age. It is now 15 years old. The next 40% growth will be in 2030. And that's a 360K Bitcoin. A lot of people would say that is quite bearish.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say, I guarantee someone right now is saying this is very bearish. But the idea is, if this pattern continues, that's what we get. That's the math. And there's nothing that we can do about it, right? We definitely want a lot more and a lot better, of course, but and like I said, there's tons of volatility, right? This is just talking about continuation of an average pattern. But if you add the cycles to it, always, if you look at all these bubbles that created, they just take the price significantly higher than a relationship like this would suggest, right? But it's not going to last for a long time, right? So you probably see super, super high numbers, but there will be lots of volatility. But I'd like to, just because I don't care much about the ups and downs, I like to think in terms of fundamentals, in terms of growth and adoption. So what really matters to me is that red dashed line, just keep doing what it's been doing. Like if that grows, if the average grows, I don't care if the price goes a lot higher or a lot lower, as long as it just reverts back to the mean. But yeah, that's the same relationship would suggest that another 40%, which is 21 years old, 2030. There, the average will be this, but you probably have much higher top and perhaps a little bit lower for the bottom of the bear market that happens then.
I think this is a low-key kind of bullish, because what I heard is basically 2030 bear market is going to be 360K. Like I think we can live with that. We know it's going to go higher, but it's going to go down to 360K. Like I could get behind this. I think we still have cycle theory playing out for the next couple of years. So I think there's some logic to this. But go, Nico, I cut you off. Sorry. There is some other topics here, but Nico, flesh this out.
Yeah. So, and let's talk about next year. So a lot of people are, Bitcoin's chopping sideways. A lot of people are getting unmotivated. And one of the theories that we're hearing this cycle is this whole idea of diminishing returns. So people are saying, 2025, yeah, we might peak, but we'll peak at 100K Bitcoin, 120K Bitcoin, 200K Bitcoin. I think a lot of people potentially, feel a little bit underwhelmed on those price levels. What would be your response to them?
Listen, all I see is not too long ago, we were at 16K and everybody was just crying and there was blood in the street. In a super short amount of time, we've gone up, what is it, like for 57 today? I think that's quite amazing. If you just learned about Bitcoin when it was like at 75 and after all the initial effect of ETFs was priced in and a ton of excitement was created, that's a little bit, that's not a great time to enter. And it's totally understandable for people to get disappointed when the price is low. And it's also choppy. Chopping is like one of the hardest things for people to wrap their minds around, because it goes up and makes you optimistic and then crashes. And then when it crashes, you probably get bearish, and then next week it goes up. So it kind of makes you think, okay, I was wrong. A bull market is resuming, but now next week again it crashes. So it plays with people's psychology, and I, in a perverse way, it's kind of funny to watch this, how price action messes up people's brain. And if you look at history, this is nothing new. Like, we've had this pattern every time, because Bitcoin is kind of behaves like a spring, and when it's coiled and compressed, it explodes at once, and then it spends a lot of time just getting compressed again. So compression is very slow and explosion is very fast. And that's actually also not a new concept to Bitcoin. Many financial assets do work like this. If you run the numbers on S&P 500, you'll probably find that most of the gains come in like 3-4 days in a year, and the rest of the year is just boring price action. That's why, by the way, that's why hodling is very important, and staying invested, not trying to time the market. You probably can time like little moves here and there, but you're gonna miss the biggest move, right? So this is exactly what we want. I mean, after the move from 16 to 75 and right now 57, we want to spend some time. I mean, the market has to kind of absorb enough capital to make these price levels sustainable. And that's going to form a new bottom for us. And kind of like you were saying, thinking about the bottom improving is very important. The bottom is going up, but then you have a lot of volatility that obfuscates it. And all I see here is that we're just accumulating more and more economic energy in the system to form a great basis and a great foundation for the next leg up.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. So we are getting close to the top of the hour.
I do want one last question, and I think this is a good way to end the show because it does tie into the whole theme of today's show. Sina, we've mentioned that you are a professor, and I have this great tweet here, and I think it's going to kind of like really hammer home this idea of proper economic education. So just reading this first part, you said, I began a class showing that business transactions are not extractive win-loss and are value-adding win-win activities. And a student came up to you and said you basically blew her mind. And this is just emphasizing the importance of proper economic education. So just tying up today's show with the theme of it's so easy to gaslight everyone because they don't understand economics. They're economically illiterate. Can you just end the show on why you think it's so important for proper economic education, and then maybe even touch a little bit on what exactly is that proper economic education?
Yeah, listen, the only reason, as you guys also very well mentioned in the beginning, the only reason these politicians can trick us is because we are not thinking enough about the economic side of things, and a lot of people are not educated properly. The reason they get excited that they get a handout for buying certain things, they get support from the government for down payment on a house. The reason you get excited about these things because you don't know where that money is coming from and what are the implications of it. The reason we get fooled by Elizabeth Warren saying that businesses are price gouging and taking advantage of people is because we don't understand economics properly. And Marxist socialist ideologies are kind of doing a lot of damage here. They're convincing people, especially poor people that are truly hurting, to think that the reason that they're suffering is that the other side, which is the business, is unnecessarily raising the prices. Why can't you just sell the same thing to me at a cheaper price? And they're perpetuating this cycle of people wanting to steal from the wealthy. And if you really think about it, that the price occurs for a reason. If something is expensive, my question is, why isn't another producer joining the market to produce it as a cheaper price? Because if you're just gouging the price and it should be a lot lower, there is money to be made. There is another actor that can join the economy and produce the same thing at a much lower price. Everyone will be happy. The reason it's not happening is either because there's no price gouging or some crazy law, some crazy rule is preventing another entrepreneur doing the right thing. In both cases, we don't need government. We don't need politicians to use a hammer and put pressure on prices to go down. And you don't understand all these things when you have this framework of extraction. So when I buy something, the seller is stealing my money. Now I lost money, they gain money. That thinking is the philosophy behind socialism, right? So if that's the case, you always want them to give everything for free to you. But in the other way to look at it is, if you paid $100 for something, well, you are not crazy. You did it voluntarily. And that only means you got more value, more than $100 out of that transaction. So if you analyze it this way, any economic transaction, if it is voluntary, if nobody is forcing you to do it, is a win-win. So you need more transactions. And if somebody is getting rich in that kind of free market, it's great. It's the most ethical thing they could do. Getting rich means you produced a ton of value for other human beings. That's respectable. That means you were just much more helpful to everybody else. And that's a complete opposite way of, socialists think. And they're training our kids to think incorrectly like that.
100%. Well, this is why, education, Bitcoin education is so important. The separation of money and state is so important. I don't think socialism can exist. I mean, it's the fifth tenet of the Communist Manifesto, the necessity for a central bank, right? So I think Bitcoin, fixes these things for sure. And it also, just holding Bitcoin, I think it fixes you. It definitely makes you feel empowered. It gives you a true appreciation for the value of money, and what money could, what actual sound money could do for you. So, anyways, we're getting to the top of the hour. I do want to thank our guest today, Sina from 21st Capital. Sina, what is 21st Capital? Where could people find it? What is it about? Who's it for?
So, to be brief, at 21st Capital, we solve every question you might have about Bitcoin. So we are an advising company. A lot of our work is around hand-holding people to teach them how to custody their coins. If you have a question about hardware wallet, if you have a problem with your wallets, if you have a problem with locating your funds, if you have a problem with any aspect of purchasing, storing, and gaining sovereignty over your money, we can help. We also help people with legacy planning. We also create custom courses. Actually, a few weeks back, we just finished a course that was designed specifically for a family. And a highlight of it was, after we finished the course, the dad, which was like in the 50s, he reached the conclusion that the existing system is a scam. Just like Nico was saying. And so we do education as well. And then we also have begun putting more and more quantitative analysis around it. So if you have any kind of those questions, reach out to us. We'd be happy to chat.
Absolutely. I'm going to put it in the chat for you guys as well, and in the video description. And I do want to thank our guests for joining us today and giving us these awesome insights. So appreciate you, Sina. Thank you so much for coming on. Again, he's the COO of 21st Capital. Go to 21stcapital.com today. And of course, my legendary co-host, Optimus Fields. This was your episode for September 11th. I just realized the date. And that's pretty sad. September 11th, 2024. And we're Simply Bitcoin Live. We love you all. We appreciate everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And we'll see you on tomorrow's episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. Peace out, everybody.
By bitcoinwell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.